How about now? How about now? Okay. First item is public comment. Does anyone wish to speak on something not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one, I will move on. Discussion items. Report from school committee members. Does anyone have anything they wish to bring up?
I
Chris,
do.
go ahead.
I was fortunate enough to be invited to the Middleborough High School Future Ready Dinner, in which the Future Ready team kind of laid out the idea of Future Ready. It was extremely exciting, something I'm very passionate about, of being able to offer different pathways to our students. And it kind of centers around the MyLab, which we've heard a lot about all the great work that it's doing, but pulling in classes like math or even ELA and connecting those skills. And it was inspiring to see how many members of the community and different local businesses showed up and had great ideas. And it's just a great way to increase student engagement, increase graduation, higher wages, and just really build Middleborough from the inside out. So I just wanted to mention how inspiring that was and look for it going forward.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Seeing no one, I'll turn it over to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairman Young, members of the school committee. I'll begin tonight's report with presenting Mr. Andrew Dysel. If you want to come over to the table, what we're going to be talking about tonight is the safety audit that we've discussed in previous meetings. I know Chief Perkins and Chief Thompson are also both here, but I'd like to start with Mr. Dysel, who can present out on a little bit about our process, the search process, and where it stands as of today. So welcome, Mr. Dysel.
Sure. Welcome. Good evening. Oh, welcome to me. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all well. If I toggle this space bar while I get my slides.
You're just rolling through my slide deck, Andy.
I got you, Sarah. Back to square one. Okay. Well, I'm going to go slide less right now. Good evening once again. I'm here to speak to you about the Middleborough Public Schools safety audit. At the request of Superintendent Lyons, myself as chairperson of the District Emergency Response Team, along with SROs Wixton, Phillips, and Valerio, began to vet a number of companies that we could partner with to conduct a safety audit of our entire district. In compliance with that request, 6 companies were contacted and 5 meetings were held with different vendors that offered the service that we were looking for. At the June 15th, 2023 meeting of the District Emergency Response Team Executive Committee meeting, our membership voted unanimously to select a company called Act for Safety LLC out of Woburn, Mass, to conduct our school district safety and security audit next school year. As we sit here right now, we are looking to begin that audit sometime in September 2023. In short, Act for Safety will send 3 school safety specialists to provide a full facility assessment of all 4 campuses, as well as the central office, during day and evening hours for 2 consecutive days. More specifically, Act for Safety will review the MPS District Emergency Operations Plans, our safety manuals, and the physical facilities and grounds. They will make recommendations and help create solutions based on state and national standards. They will conduct interviews with predetermined school and public safety personnel, provide a full report of the findings and recommendations to the superintendent within 30 days of the site visit. They'll also be available for phone consultation up to 6 months after the findings have been reported, and return 6 months after the site visit had been concluded to meet with the superintendent and the district emergency response team for up to 2 hours to review the progress that we've made since their visit. So long story short, they're going to come, vet everything that we do in regard to safety and security, our physical plan, our policies, our procedures, our activities, our day-to-day operations, and they're going to tell us where we meet, exceed, or fall short to some degree to state and national standards for school safety. The timeline for the audit, September 2023, The on-site safety and security audit by ACT for Safety will be held. October, the following month, the findings and recommendations will be reported to the superintendent. November 2023, we are going to hold a district-wide professional development on safety. I think it's important to note that it's not just emergency response and physical safety. We are considering the whole child, the whole employee, the whole school environment when we are going to be putting together this day for safety. And then between November 2023 through April 2023, we will be able to consult with via phone with ACT for Safety in an effort to make sure that we have all of our questions answered, our needs serviced, and make sure that we're on track for that 6-month post visit to make sure that we are where we need to be. With that, I welcome any questions about the safety audit.
Andy, a couple of questions I had, having gone through safety audit in a previous job and in a previous school. Can you talk a little about the different, I know there are lots and lots of companies that do this. Can you talk about the difference between companies out of state versus somebody in state or probably even local?
Sure. In conversation with other companies, we talked to companies out of Oregon. We talked to companies out of Ohio. And the entire district emergency response team really liked the fact that this group is out of Woburn. They have spent their entire careers in public safety and school safety, specifically in the law enforcement industry, as well as computer technology safety. So there is going to be a tech component for technological safety as well. They will better understand, in our opinion, two things. The local culture of Massachusetts, and also really be very well vetted in state guidelines, whether it's from DESE or other entities, as well as national standards. So we really did like that local piece to it versus the more national brands that we thought might have a less personal touch or better understanding about our community.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions from committee? Go ahead, Jess.
You mentioned that they will interview predetermined staff. Is there any kind of expectation as to what roles and which types of staff they'll be looking to talk to?
So I think they're most interested in meeting with members of our building emergency response team members and our district emergency response team members. My understanding also is they'd like to pull from teaching staff, educational support personnel, to not just get the opinions of those that are kind of in the thick of it, and this is what we focus on, but those who are affected by it. So it's a more well-rounded view of what's really going on here. And they also would like to speak with members of our fire department and police department and possibly Brewster. I'm not sure about Brewster, but it's important to note that 5 members of our district emergency response team executive committee, 3 are from the police department and 2 are from the fire department. So we do have those community connections as well that we're always pulling from, just so we know that we're doing the best we can to keep our kids as safe as we possibly can.
And Andy, just to make sure that if I'm correct, there is a new ambulance service in town, so Brewster is not the ambulance service
So we
anymore.
will not be talking.
Just wanted to
My
point that out.
apologies.
Chris, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
I had a few, but.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more quick question, because you talked about them being part of evening activities as well. So will there be discussions with some of the staff who are part of the, if you've got practice in the evening, what are the security protocols and things like that?
Sure. What I'm most familiar with here is Middleborough High School, and we are alive at night, as most of us know. There's a lot of things happening here. And so I will make it a point to try to really pull from athletic, fine arts personnel as well, because, we've got VATSI happening. We've got band things and happenings. We've got athletic events. So we will make it a point to make sure that, to the very best of our ability, that all the stakeholders that meet here at any time during the day are heard from.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Chris, go right ahead.
Is there any talk about interviewing any parents or other members of the community about their concerns on the safety?
That is not found in the quote and conversations that Officer Wixon has had with them, but I also don't think that it's off the table. I found that Act for Safety is very willing to work with us in contracting what we need, what our community needs. That goes along with the local piece to it. So if it's deemed necessary, certainly by this body, by the DIRT team, we have not got that far in our discussions, but they by name talk about stakeholders and safety, but certainly parents could be seen as those as well, and maybe the most important part.
Okay.
So certainly on the table would be parents, and certainly other members of our community that would feel the need to be heard, that would be appropriate to hear from.
Thank you. The other thing, I see the timeline. I know from the stakeholders, there was a little bit of frustration on how long the process has taken already, but should the town of Middleborough feel confident that the district will be accountable to this timeline?
How confident should we be?
Yeah.
We should be very confident as long as the funds will be released to purchase their services. Their timeline, we're already been penciled in for a timeline in that mid-September mark.
Excellent. Thank you. And
Sure.
just because you brought up the budget or the quote, can we ballpark that yet, or?
I cannot speak to that.
Okay.
I have to defer to the superintendent, Mrs. Hickey.
Yeah, I mean, are you asking what the price is?
Yeah.
In this particular case, it was about $9,800. And that was budgeted for the budget within the budget process for this coming budget.
Excellent. Thank you.
I apologize. I misunderstood the question. The quote that we received specifically is $9,950. I thought the question was whether or not we would have clearance to release those monies from the budget, and that's not
Okay.
my call. That's
Good
above
enough.
my
I got
pay
my
grade.
answer. Thank you.
I have a quick question. I don't know if this is necessarily for Andy or not. Say that the audit comes back with a costly scenario where we have a deficiency. Do we have the resources in our budget currently to rectify those immediately to ensure that the schools remain safe?
This is a good question, and it really honestly depends on how much we're talking. Whenever you're budgeting for safety, there are lines within each building. So it really kind of depends on what the expense is. That said, regardless of what comes back, if it's something that the district determines that it needs to be done, and the advice has to be taken from this group, even if it can't immediately be provided, budget season would be dovetailing with exactly this timing, so that were there to be a need, we could make that plan if it were like a very costly sort of thing. Actually, I wanted to jump in on the findings as well while I had a brief minute, because I think we have to be somewhat careful about how we talk about these findings. I think it's appropriate to come back to you in November, because by November we'll have had that feedback. And I think it's important for the community to hear some portion of what's been shared. You know what I mean? I don't think it should be something that the community isn't aware of, but I do need to be mindful of exactly how much gets shared, because it implicates safety. So what I would like to do is come back probably with Mr. Dysel and, unpack that a little at this meeting, and or potentially have an executive session, just so that members are aware of what we've learned, and there's some, sort of discussion about that.
Other questions? You have a question, go right ahead.
You hear me? Sarah Zagoras, thank you. So a couple questions. So I know this isn't starting until September, does the DIRT meet in the summer? Or is it like just September because of the start of school?
A smaller membership will meet this summer, yes. Not the entire executive committee, but a small membership, yes.
Okay, because part of the problem, especially at the MKG, is that there's doors that major safety issue. We can't wait until September for that to be fixed. So when people are in the building and walk by, you hear them click and unlock. There's at least 2 doors that do that.
Yeah, so the doors have been discussed here before, and there's been a couple of meetings, not just with DIRT or District Emergency Response Team, but also facilities and the MEA. This has been an ongoing issue. There were several door repairs made during April vacation, and there are several more planned for the summer. So the facilities director and the MEA are currently sharing lists to make sure we're all talking about the same doors, and so that all of those doors will be repaired over this summer break. Door repairs, particularly when school is open, from a safety standpoint. So there is a limitation on when you can fix doors, because ultimately you have to have them open the entire time you're working on them. But they are targeted for this summer. So I'm confident that all of those doors the door issues will be resolved over this coming break period.
And then what about the entrance to the complex, the MKG and HBB? Those two in particular do not have that kind of waiting area between. And this, again, just seems like it's being pushed off more, and that's something that could be looked at without school being in. You could come and physically see the outside of the buildings and say, hey, this person just gets buzzed in, and then they walk right into the entry where kids are eating lunch, kids are walking in the hallway. I just really think that needs to get addressed while the kids aren't there, especially if major construction is involved, because what's going to happen is it's going to come to findings in November, going to say it needs major reconstruction, and then it's going to be another year until stuff gets done, because you can't do it when the kids are there.
Well, this is actually the point of the audit. I know there's a desire to have these so-called man traps put in. I think that's something that we're looking to this group to kind of conclusively tell us, is that what we should be doing? Is that the best way to keep, that area secure? Both the fire chief and the police chief and I have actually talked about this issue specifically, and we've talked about ways to fortify the glass. Because the belief system is that even a man trap is not a foolproof solution. So I think we'll be looking to the audit. This is exactly the type of thing it'd be good to get this kind of professional global opinion on, so that we can make a plan and go forward with it.
But I think waiting till September to start is the problem. I think that's not having somebody come out even in August, mid-August, to look even before the kids are there. Maybe we can use the windows that are there and change out the windows so that people can give their ID like a bank window outside of the two, because the office at MKG is right at the door. Mm-hmm. So you could just convert that to a bank type door, people send in their ID and you know why they're there. I just think it just feels like more push off, that it's just getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And then, it's been another year that nothing's changed.
So I don't agree that nothing's changed. There's been quite a few repairs already, in addition to multiple discussions about it. But more importantly, when we contacted these groups, one of the first questions we had was when. And Mr. Dysel can speak more to that, because I know we had those conversations, but they were pretty adamant with us that you don't want to do an audit like this in the summer. They really wanted to see school in full swing, and they also wanted to see night activities. So if you've ever been here on a Friday night for a football game, you know what I'm referencing, because there's a lot of activity on our campus. Safety looks different at Middleborough High School on a Friday night under the lights than it does at the MEC on a Tuesday afternoon at 3, for example. So these are the things that I think we'll be getting answers to with this audit.
And I respectfully disagree that this should have been done last year. We could have gone into the school year having vetted places in the summer and done this during the school year last year. And then, so that still wouldn't have been the summer. It just feels like this process has taken too long. The doors still don't work. I just walked by one the other day and it unlocked at MKG. And unless you have kids there, I get that it's not a major concern, but I have kids there and it's a major concern. So I just think that pushing things off is not gonna make anything go away. It's not gonna make people more confident in the process. It's not gonna make anything safer. I just think that it just feels like a lot of talk and not a lot of action. So thank you.
Sure. I just want to add that it's a major concern for all the educators who work. This is a shared concern, district-wide school safety. It impacts everybody that works in this district, every parent, every child, and every community member. So I do agree with you that it is a major issue.
Any other questions? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Dysel.
Thank you.
So with that, I'm going to turn into the summer programs overview, and I will call up our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Terry Markolitis, to come talk to us about programs you can expect to be running this summer. And while they're setting up, I note that Mr. Brannigan will also be presenting, and Ms. Healy will also be presenting on our Splash program, our summer arts program, and our special education inclusion program.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? Thanks for having us. We're going to do a very brief update about our summer programming. I want to talk to you about our Summer Curriculum Institute, which we started today. I know this is a lengthy slide. I'm going to sum it up real quick. We had about 70 teachers who came in the day after school got out, and so kudos to them, to do some really important curriculum work, looking at the work that we have done in the past, looking at our current frameworks from the state of Massachusetts, and looking at how we can improve student outcomes. It was really kindergarten through 12th grade educators working together, looking at our curriculum documentation work that has been done, and looking at what still needs to be done. We are meeting 3 more days next week, and then we will continue this work next year with our vertical articulation teams. Some of the highlights that I wanted to touch on. As I said, we started this work in the spring, and we focused primarily on ELA and math for obvious reasons. Those are our tested subjects, along with science, but we had to start somewhere. As of today, we added all of the other content areas, including physical education, health, performing arts. I might be missing something, and if I am, I apologize to those people. Today, we worked on deconstructing standards, designing assessments, and crafting lessons. We started to look at science and social sciences. We are focusing on creating common assessments and collaborating with our colleagues. All of this work that we are doing in the summer is not done in isolation. We will be sharing it back with colleagues during professional development days, professional learning communities, and at other times to be determined. Summer Splash will start July 10th. Our coordinators are returning from last year, Emma Del Vecchio and Jen Gorman. The time is a little bit shortened this year. We felt that the 9:30 to 2:30 day was far too long last year for our young students. So we shortened it from 9:30 to 11:30. The location is HBB, the same as it was last year. And we are serving rising kindergartners all the way up through rising 6th graders. We also have a partnership with Parks and Rec this summer. It's a pilot program, and we're going to see how it goes. Students go from Summer Splash over to Parks and Rec. We are transporting them, so it's a full day of both education and fun. Some of the topics our students will be covering during Summer Splash are Shark Week. It's a gentler Shark Week than what we know. Down by the Sea, Crazy About Critters, Spanish Basics, which I'm really excited about for our students, Space Explorers, and Intro to Kindergarten.
Thank you, Terry. We're, as Mr. Dysel was saying about the high school, that it's a very busy place this summer already. As you know, that Mr. Sylvia, our athletic director, came before you to share out some of the summer programming for athletics. But we have 2 more programs that are running out of the high school this summer. The first one is our credit recovery program for high school, for any student who met the threshold for summer school. If they lost credit because of absences or they lost credit because they failed the course, they have an opportunity to engage in 2 of our aspects of credit recovery. One, the one I'm speaking about tonight, is through our morning program, as well as obviously the community evening school that happens obviously in the evening here. It's small groups of teachers working with students through their classes. Amy Byrne, one of our school counselors, will serve as the coordinator this summer. We're doing 2 weeks of courses, the week of the 10th and the week of the 17th of July. And you see the times there from 8 to noon. Students will be able to make up at least 2 classes to do the recovery of their credit. And it's really nice that we use an online program that we have really vetted to align with our own curriculum called Admentum. It's part of our online learning academy. And then we'll have Mrs. Byrne creating the courses, and then the team of teachers that will be working individually with those students in their respective content areas as well. And also just our summer arts camp, our arts summer camp, excuse me, that this really came out of the last 2 years of some of the performing arts programming we were trying to do to kind of give a re-life to our arts program since the pandemic. And we're continuing it now as well with the arts program from 9:30 to, it should be 11:30 a.m. That's a long day for the arts. So we'll be doing a 2-hour window in the morning. And again, it's through July 10th through August 4th. And really, it's really looking at all the different areas of the performing arts, from music, choir, band, the media arts, theater, and that students will be able to engage in all 4 areas as a rotation and then be able to really create a final performance. At least that's the vision of Sam Mosher, who is coordinating the summer program this year. And that enrollment is still open. There's literature that is on the school website that you'd be able to register. It's for grades 6 through 12. Right now, we have just about 30 students, which is a nice number at this time. And you see the number of current staff members that are engaged with the program this summer. And now I want to turn it over to Mrs. Healy to talk about the extended school year.
Thank you. Through special education, we offer our extended school year program each summer. This program really serves our students with IEPs, and during their team meetings, we would determine whether or not these students presented with significant regression over time periods in which they wouldn't have instruction. And so for qualifying students, they would attend our ESY program, either in the full program, which runs Monday through Thursday, 9 to 1, or through tutoring. And that would depend on their individualized team and whether or not those students required those services. This year, our coordinators are Wendy Youngcliffe and Joshua Dyer. Wendy, this is her second year as a coordinator for the ESY program, and Joshua Dyer has participated in the program as teaching staff for many years, but this is his first time as coordinator. I'd also like to give a shout out to our special ed coordinator at the elementary level, Kimberly Redlawn, who has put in a tremendous amount of work in getting this program organized and up and running this year. Our dates this year will start on Monday, July 3rd with an open house. So staff will be there setting up classrooms, getting ready for our students, and we're inviting families to come in from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock at the Memorial Early Childhood Center where the program will take place. The full program will run from July 5th to August 10th, Monday through Thursday, as I mentioned. And our tutoring program will run July 10th to August 3rd, as well as itinerant services. I mentioned the time already, and just to make note, if you have a pre-K student, their full day program is actually in 2 sessions, an AM session 9 to 11 or a PM session 11 to 1. I already mentioned the location, and I think I mentioned the qualifying students. Some highlights, we mentioned that last year we added quite a few different things to boost our programming, and so we're going to continue with a lot of those as well as add some more. This program always individualizes academics, behaviors, and social approaches to maintain skills. We are looking into a new partnership with ASL Fitness. It's a group out of Brockton that specializes with students with special education needs for fitness activities and adapted physical education needs. We're going to continue our partnership with Wellspring Farms in Rochester, our therapeutic farm that we've had the opportunity to visit for many years now. We are continuing with some enrichment activities, which includes art and music. We are excited about a new activity for storytelling, theme weeks, and more to come. I don't want to give it away. I'll give you an update in September, most likely. We're going to continue our communication through our S'mores newsletter, which was a new type of communication that we brought on last year and was very successful with our families. We're also looking to offer some information sessions this summer so that families can come in and we can provide just some short opportunities to connect with some of our providers through the school district so that you can carry over some skills and strategies, either behavioral or communication strategies And then we will also do our showcase on August 10th as we did last year. I think that's it.
Questions for the group? Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Oh, wait.
No, I'm just going to say there was so much going on during the summer and making this summer extended, but go right ahead.
I just had a quick question about the middle school tutoring for the IEP students. I know you said it's for students who could regress over the summer. Is there programs for an IEP student who, for the majority of the year, was an A student and ended the year failing? So the regression has already started. Is there a program for those students available?
There's not a specific program like tailored to that, specific student. However, that would really be determined through whatever team meeting that might have been held. I mean, anytime we see a student who demonstrates such a significant decline, the team would want to get together and make sure that the supports that are in place currently are effective. So I would really circle that back to your team and your special education teacher to make sure that whatever is written into the IEP is effective and that we're taking data on that. It could be that there's a different approach we need to be exploring. But as far as the ESY program, it really looks at, we take data over time. So we would collect data maybe prior to February vacation, and then we take that same data after February vacation to see if that skill was maintained or if there was significant learning loss. So that's sort of what we're looking at. But I understand your question about the more global starting the year. I would definitely circle back to your team and kind of.
I emailed, so if you could possibly email me, that would be great, because I'm not getting any replies.
Okay.
So that would be great if you could.
Maybe you could, yes, forward me those
Perfect.
emails.
I just want to make sure I was going about this the right way. So thank you so much.
I actually just had a comment. After last week's standing room only elementary concert that was here for first and second year band students, I emailed Sam and they actually opened up the arts program to incoming fifth graders. So it's not just sixth grade anymore, it said on the slide. So incoming fifth graders. So I was trying to share it in the elementary pages because it still said sixth on everything. So maybe just to update the communication and perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I will turn to Athletic Director Ryan Sylvia, who's here this evening to talk about athletic programs that will be running this summer as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Lyons, Chairman Young, and the rest of the school committee. Thanks for having me tonight. Before I get started, I do have to give a shout out to our girls softball program that won the state championship. I know everyone's seen it all over the place, but the more we celebrate it, the better. First girls team to reach the state final and win a championship. So congratulations to them. And I also want to say, I think our school district does an outstanding job with summer programming. We have academics, we have arts, and we have the tutoring going on. So I think that's awesome. And now this is athletics. So I presented this in, I want to say it was March, but this will be a little more detail. I'm going to kind of sum it up quickly though. Basically, we offer our coaches, our head coaches of our athletic programs to run a clinic if they choose during the summer. And for some sports, it makes a lot of sense. And for others, it doesn't. And so that's why that not every sport is represented. So everything that I'm going to go over tonight is on the school website on the athletics page. So if you just click on athletics and click the register now through Arbiter, all of the information is there and you can find it when you read through the registration page. It can be a little cumbersome and there's kind of tech issues with it that, you know, if you don't register with this, if you try to create a new account with the same email, it kicks it back. So I get a lot of emails with, I can't register, there's no room left. It's not the case. You just got to focus a little more on the tech side of things. So anyway, we have 16 unique athletic opportunities in the summer. They run all summer long. There's kind of 3 tiers that we have. We have 4-day clinics. That's kind of the first tier. And within those 4-day clinics, those are sport clinics where they're working on skills, drills, fundamentals, progressing up to small-sided gameplay. And there's kind of two parts of that first tier. There's the elementary or youth level clinics. And the sports that we offer youth level clinics are basketball, wrestling, soccer, and track and field. Now, wrestling, soccer, and basketball, those start for students entering third grade, third through fifth. But I really want to put some emphasis on the youth and community track and field program that's new this year that starts in kindergarten and goes all the way up through ninth grade. And it's our head track and field coach will be here running that program with some of his staff and a lot of student volunteers where they're taking kids through, just learning the basics of a foam javelin for the kindergartners and a plastic disc, running over small hurdles. And then every week they'll do a practice, and then the following week they'll do a meet, they'll get ribbons and things like that. So we've kind of modeled it off some other local programs. And parents can come walk the outside lanes around the outside of the track, or just be on campus during that time. It's Tuesday nights, 6 to 7:30. It starts next week, and we've already got about 40 people signed up. So the cost for that one is only $25. The other youth program I really want to highlight is wrestling, and it's kind of unique. We're offering it at no cost this year, and we're able to do that because some of the other programs are so popular, and it's really in an effort to build up interest in the sport. We have 2 sets of brand new wrestling mats. We have a great facility for wrestling, and we have a strong team. We actually just had an All-American female wrestler this year, Ayla Goldman. I'll give her a shout out too. She was our award winner this year for seniors. So those are the youth programs. We also offer other 4-day clinics on that first tier with girls basketball, also wrestling, boys basketball, tennis, volleyball, softball, soccer, and that's it. And those clinics are geared more towards the middle-aged, students entering 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So again, all of that is on the website. So that's the second tier that we have of summer programming are the weekly clinics. So we have strength and conditioning that's offered at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., and 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday. They do not meet on Fridays. Everything is at the fitness center in the high school here. It's a 1-hour training session, and that's open to students entering 9th through 12th grade. And then we also have an endurance track and field program that meets weekly throughout the summer. It's basically a running club, and that's for students entering 9 through 12. And then we have field hockey that meets once a week for students entering grades 9 through 12. And that meets on Wednesday nights. And then the kind of third tier are summer leagues that we run, and that's an opportunity for students to not have to leave the district to participate in these summer programs. So we actually have other schools coming in and competing in 7-on-7 football on Monday nights with Middleborough. We run 2 games a night, or actually 4 games a night, going opposite fields on the turf on Monday nights. And then we have a 7-on-7, a summer league girls basketball league that started last night on Monday and Wednesday nights. There's 10 teams involved in that. That come and compete all season long. So with that, before we even get any more registrations, we already have 364 participants registered, which is the equivalent of a whole nother sports season. It's not the same volume because they're not practicing every day. They're not playing games every day, but it's a lot of activity in the summer. And I think we'll get some more registrations as we go through. So that's pretty much the summary, and I can answer any questions that anybody might have.
Ryan, have you seen an increase from last year?
It's hard to say before we get to the end of the summer. I usually do a wrap up at the end, but it seems like it's an increase. If you don't count the leagues that have students from other schools coming, we have 164 participants. We're usually in the 250, 300 range at the end. But a lot of these fill up, the day before the clinic starts. They're like, oh, I got to get in. So,
Cool. Thank you. Other questions for Ryan? Alan?
How you doing, Ryan? All this sounds pretty good. I have a question about the softball.
Sure.
It seems crazy to me that Middleborough played Norton and Amherst. Same thing happened last year. Middleborough played, I think it was New Bedford and Amherst. And my wife would have really liked to have gone to both of those games. And we had a Little League championship down the street. There's no way she could have gotten there on time.
Yeah. You forgot to mention it was on Father's Day too.
And it was on Father's Day. That's it. I'm not allowed to mention that.
So unfortunately, when you get to that level, when you get to the state level and particularly the Final Four and the state championship, there's a format that's already laid out and predetermined. And they're very rigid on wanting to move away from that format once it's set. There actually was a team that started their game in Amherst and got rained out, and they refused to go back, and they ended up finishing the game in the state championship on a lower division. So it was less than ideal, but we kind of had to roll with it. And I definitely voiced my opinion on that to the tournament director and to the state association. Not in a negative way, but just in the sense that like, hey, let's try to do things that make a little more sense. That I think the mindset from the state association was all of the state championships will be in one place, which makes it convenient for staffing and for a lot of reasons for them.
So for everybody who doesn't play, it makes sense for everybody who doesn't play.
Right, exactly.
None of the fans.
And then the other piece, which I will give them this piece, the facility is pretty much the premier softball facility in Massachusetts that they have available to them. I mean, the seating capacity, the stands, the viewing angles of the game, and the grass and the field playing surface in general was very nice. It created a good experience for the kids. But there are other factors there that didn't. I mean, our team had the final game, and I think it was close to midnight by the time we got back. So a little disappointing in that sense, but I think they're going to look at it and hopefully come up with something that makes more sense in the future.
If you'd like any help at all, advocate for a more sensible option. I'm more than happy to help.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate that.
Other questions for Ryan? Ryan, thanks again. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we will turn to a budget update with Director of Business and Finance, Sarah Hickey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Superintendent Lyons, and thank you, school committee members. I have two presentations, and I have two presentations and three things to talk about. So whoever's queuing up presentations has a little bit of time to find them. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the multi-year delegation process. So we're going to be talking about money. And we, as the school district, have three sources of money that we have: the operating budget from the town, we have grant funding, and we have with the granting, there was a change to how grants worked a number of years ago. It was actually federal grant. It used to be in the olden days, you had a grant and you had the money for 1 year, and whatever you didn't spend in the 1 year, you had to send back. And it was stressful for school districts because you had to rush to spend the money. It was also stressful for the federal government because they were getting all of this money back that they really wanted to give to the school districts. So this tithings amendment created an opportunity for the districts to roll over money into a future year. So there's a process in May called the multi-year delegation, where for us here in Middleborough, I took all the federal grants that we had that were eligible for multi-year delegation, and I sent the information out to whomever it was that was in charge of the grant. So for example, Dr. Markulitis works with the Title I grant. And so I sent her information. I said, this is how much money there is currently in the grant. We need to determine how much is going to be spent between now and June 30th. And we need to roll over the remainder of the money into the next fiscal year. So that process happened in May. Bottom line though, and I find this amusing, I hope you do too. Say, for example, we say we're going to spend $60,000 between May and June, and we don't spend the $60,000. That money just rolls over. We just can't draw it down until August. So it's a process. It's a fairly straightforward process. It's required by law. We did that with the grants, and we were fairly accurate with what we wanted to roll over, and then what was not spent, we're not going to lose. That being said, I will now talk about revolving accounts. Revolving accounts are governed by the Department of Revenue for the state. The Division of Local Services determines what type of revolving accounts can be had. There's two different types. There's creatively called revolving funds for school department programs and revolving funds for non-school department programs. So for example, the town has revolving funds, the school department has, and those are the two different categories. And so what I'm going to do tonight is go through the different types of revolving funds that we have for the school department, explain how the money comes in, how the money goes out, and give you the balance. What I am going to tell you is I shouldn't say most of the time, when I present to you about the finances, I have a high degree of confidence. The numbers for the balances of these accounts, I only have a moderately high degree of confidence. There has been changeover at the town with the finance team, and the town has posted revenues through January. So normally I can log into the municipal finance system, run a report. It tells me exactly how much money is in the account. This year I had to run multiple reports, set up a spreadsheet, juggle some numbers. So this is where the mostly confident comes from. Sorry, my clicker is not clicking. Okay. So the revolving accounts are set up through the town meet. They're governed by Massachusetts general law, and they're set up through the town meeting process. We have a revolving account named the Community Evening School. So on this slide, you can see on the left, there's the source of where the money comes from. On the right-hand side is how we use the money. So the Community Evening School takes tuitions and payments, say, for example, for books. And we use the money in the Community Evening School account for salaries for staff. That's the director, the teachers, clerical staff, security. And we also use the money in that account for instructional materials. The balance of that account on Friday the 16th was $76,146.21. We have a revolving account for the circuit breaker funds from the state. So the title of the account is Chapter 71 Circuit Breaker. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education reimburses school districts a percentage for students whose IEP services cost more than 4 times the statewide foundation budget. That amount last year was $47,363. The Middleborough Public Schools will receive a total of $1,304,950 during the fiscal year, the FY23 fiscal year. We used this money for out-of-district tuitions. The balance of that account on Friday was $1,201,312.22. We are allowed to carry over 1 year of tuitions in this account. So this, so essentially the $1,200,000 was last year's circuit breaker account. The circuit breaker reimbursement. And so we're carrying that over into next year. The $1.3 million, if everything goes well and we have no huge surprises with out-of-district tuition, we'll carry the $1.3 million over into the next year.
If I can add too, that account is mainly used for when we have surprise years. So in the past, for example, we had a year with $1 million of unfunded changes over the summertime into October at the time. So these things come up. So that's why you've carried over a year.
I started here in the fall of 2018. In the spring of 2019, we were not able to carry over anything. In the spring of 2020 was when we were able to start carrying money in this account into the next fiscal year. The next account is also Chapter 71 is the law that governs the account. It's our school choice account. Middleborough Public Schools has 39 students who've been enrolled for the 2022-2023 school year. Will receive $255,079 in tuition payments based on the $5,000 per student reimbursement. We spend this money on portions of staff salaries. The balance of this account on Friday was $504,954.13.
Can I ask a quick question about
Yes.
that? We get a $5,000 reimbursement for students that come from another district.
Yes.
What does it cost to educate a student per year?
Our-
Seems a little light, 5K.
Our per pupil expenditure is approximately $17,000.
But,
And we get 5?
but the understanding is this, that adding the student to a classroom doesn't change the parameters of a classroom. You're not going to add a new teacher to that classroom. You're not going to add for lighting. So while you pay a certain amount per student, that's why the state does the reimbursement at a different rate.
All right, thank you.
Just to be clear.
Thank you. The next account is the summer school account. It was actually titled Summer School. I'm sorry, I clicked myself ahead 3 slides. When the account was opened, maybe 2025, maybe, I don't know, before I was born, it was called Summer School. We use it for far much more than summer school now. So the source of revenue in this account is tuitions. We use this money for salaries and supplies for the middle and high school credit recovery program, the district-wide arts program, the Summer Splash, college boot camp, and the winter school program, which is essentially summer school at the high school in the intersession. The balance of this account is $92,297.58. I'm sorry for the dramatic pauses. The clicker works every once in a while. I only had to press it 3 times to get it to advance there. We have an account called the Chapter 71 tuition account. This money is the leftover Medicaid reimbursement. So my office 4 times a year and the special education office 4 times a year fill out this long and complicated report. It takes about a week to a week and a half of working full-time to fill out the report. It gets submitted, and then there's a Medicare reimbursement that goes to the town's general fund. So there was a period of time when that money came to the school district directly, and when it changed, the town allowed us to keep this account. So we use this to cover the costs of unanticipated special education expenses such as out-of-district placements, transportation, or legal settlements. The balance of this account on Friday was $150,601.06. I would like to say the balance of this account when I first started here was over $300,000. So this is an account that is getting chipped away at. Whenever we have something for special ed that is unexpected, unanticipated, this is our first go-to. We have a facility rental account for the Lincoln D. Lynch School. So this account, the source of the income into this account was the Massasoit Community College's rental payments for the Lincoln D. Lynch School prior to FY19. So we actually have 2 facility rental accounts. It makes no sense to have 2 facility rental accounts. So this, the school business manager prior to me made the decision that we would no longer be putting payments into this account. And so this account is only being used for payments now. The funds pay for operating costs and repairs of the Lincoln D. Lynch building and are used to fund large facility projects. The balance of this account is $266,164.32. Our other facility rental account, also called facility rental, is we deposit money from the Massasoit Community College lease payments currently. Also, any gym and field rentals go into this account. This account is used to supplement the operating budget and the maintenance of all school buildings. A portion of the salary for the facility rental clerk is covered out of this account. The facility scheduling software to manage the rentals is covered from this account. The balance of this account was $1,089,974.46.
Sarah, just
Yes.
to clarify, the prior account, the goal is to just, when it spends down, it'll
When it
close.
spends down, we will close
But
it.
you can't just transfer the money.
I would have to talk to the new town I would have to talk to the new finance team at the town about combining the two accounts.
Would it be easier? I mean, it seems silly to have two when you can just keep spending it down and wait. It really doesn't matter in the long run, but.
I can check on that.
Okay.
Again, my predecessor made a decision, somebody made a decision a long time ago that we needed two accounts. So I was just following the path set by Kathy Piatelli.
Understood.
that We should combine the accounts. But I will check to see if that's something we're allowed to do.
I also don't think, I think the original account was just for Massasoit,
Okay.
the rental for Massasoit, and the other account was a rental for facility, everything else. And so that's why I think it morphed over time, but I think it was just to separate the two.
So the next account I'm going to speak about tonight is what we call the donation or gift account. This is where when people come to the school committee and say, you're getting this from Life Touch, or somebody made a donation for XYZ. So this account is specifically for gifts and donations received on behalf of a school or a department. And the use of this account is, the funds are to be expended by the principal or director in accordance with any stipulation of the gift and or donation. For example, just within the past year, we had a friend of a former superintendent passed away, and their family wanted, in the gentleman's memory, for donations to go to the arts program, the Middleborough Public Schools. So we set up a tab in the donation account spreadsheet. The checks came in, the money was deposited, and that's a source of funding for the arts programs. But this is also where, the Life Touch money goes, and the schools, the individual schools can use the money. The principals at the schools can use the donation money for things. The balance of this account on Friday the 16th was $45,717.76. We
Go ahead.
have,
There was a question, Sarah, so I just want to make sure.
Sorry, on that previous slide. So I guess, how do we know that if the principals, it says in accordance with the stipulation, it just seems like that's a lot of money to have in an account that is supposed to be potentially used by the in-school principals. Do we know how much of that money is still allocated to go out?
yes, so the business office has a spreadsheet specifically for this account, and the spreadsheet is divided. So for example, when Mark Mobley's untimely passing, the family asks for donations in his memory to go to the Family Resource Center. So we have a tab on the spreadsheet that has the total donations, the money received into that account, and then the expenditures that are going out from that account for the Family Resource Center. Or as I said, the family that wanted to donate money to the arts program. So every time there is a donation with a specific, I haven't looked at the spreadsheet lately, it might have 40, 50, 60 tabs on it. So it's all held in one account, but it might be somebody donates $2,000 to offset costs of school lunch, or something like that.
So when do those, does each department that's getting it have to request those funds? Are they notified to say, somebody made a donation, there's this much money in an account?
It actually comes to school committee,
Okay.
and it is, it has to be approved by school committee, and there's a process, and anybody who has had a donation made that they are able to expend would know.
So they get notified. So it's
Yes.
not like it comes in and just sits there and
No.
they don't know that that it's coming in.
No, this money is money that has been given to the school department for a specific purpose, and we like to fulfill the wishes of whoever gave the money.
And this would this be scholarships too? Or that's separate?
That is completely separate.
Okay, thank you.
We have a revolving account called Flora Clark. It is the name of the building at 30 Forest Street. The income that goes into this account is, I have to be honest with you, little dribs and drabs of random money that doesn't belong anywhere else. So if Jim Hutchinson has scrap metal and he takes it to the recycling and he gets $12.35 for it, we put it in the Flora Clark account. The Flora Clark account is used for minor maintenance projects needed at 30 Forest Street and 13 Forest Street. The balance in this account was $11,684.32. I'm really looking forward to getting the carpets steam cleaned. We have an account, insurance recovery. This is money that's collected from either insurance companies for claims or from families for property damage. The funds in this account are used to replace or repair whatever equipment or property is damaged. For example, we had an accident in the the MKG boiler room. The ceiling collapsed in December of 2021. The insurance company paid, the check went into this account. We paid the builders out of this, the construction workers out of this to do the work. The balance of this account as of June 16th was $26,273.96.
One other question on that one. For the damage that was done at MKG, there was some damage to equipment outside. Would that fund be able to cover that if they requested? There was basketball hoops that were damaged, and then there was a truck that was there doing work that was damaged on school property. I don't know if that insurance would cover that, but for the damage that was actually done to the playground equipment at MKG, does that fund cover any of that? The previous one?
That fund specifically takes so for example, the courier was in an accident with the courier vehicle. The insurance company paid the check to and it goes into that account, and when the vehicle is repaired. So it is specific for whatever the insurance claim is for. So if we collected money from somebody for the damage to what you're speaking about, it would go into this account and pay for the repairs.
But the money in that account currently wouldn't pay for the repairs. Somebody else the claim would have to be filed with, whether it was families or insurance for the town then, because it's on school property. It was the permanent basketball hoops that were just put in at the MKG.
I will have to have a conversation with Facilities Director Jim
Okay.
Hutchinson about that.
Okay.
I was aware that this happened. I didn't know that we were going to file an insurance claim for this.
I don't know what the process is. I just know that we have brand new basketball hoops that are covered up now and can't be used because they were vandalized. I don't know the whole process, but when I saw that fund, I thought, does that cover, because it's on school property, is that something that's paid for because the kids use it? So, yeah, I mean, if you could find out, that would be great.
I will check into that.
Thank you.
We have an account. It's actually officially called Lost Damaged Books, but We don't necessarily deal, this is what it was named 30, 40, 50 years ago when the account was opened. I refer to it as lost, damaged books and technology. If a student loses a power cord, that's where the money gets deposited. So this is money collected for lost, damaged textbooks, technology, and combination locks. That was in the description of the account. We use this for item replacement and parts for tech repairs. The balance of this account was $16,190.21. We have a preschool revolving account. There are member peers that participate in the preschool program, and the families pay tuition for the students to participate in that program. The FY23 and FY24 operating budgets use the preschool tuition funds to pay a portion of staff salaries. This account is also used to purchase supplies and materials for the preschool classrooms. The balance of this account on Friday was $96,978.39. School lunch revolving account. The source of the funds in this account is the federal school lunch reimbursements, and as well as sales of meals and a la carte items. As you know, all lunches were free during this past school year and the prior school year. So there haven't been sales of meals. So just for the past 2 years, it's just been the federal lunch reimbursements and a la carte items this year, but not previous years.
Those add up pretty fast.
There are sales to staff.
Oh,
Because I have
yes.
to sign the meals tax warrant all the time.
And it's sometimes like $1.83.
Exactly.
Right. So yes, sales of meals to staff. The money in this account is used to pay the food service salaries and supplies. The balance of this account on Friday was $589,838.75. I want to mention that we're currently in negotiations with the cafeteria staff, and any retroactive payment for this past school year would come from this account. But this account also covers summer program. We feed the extended school year program. So this amount that's in this account will cover summer program salaries and expenses. This amount also covers food orders for the start of the new school year. We will start the school year with a full fridge in every kitchen. And we're also in the process of purchasing a food truck.
Unrelated question. Do we have any idea if the state is covering school lunches next year?
It hasn't been decided yet. It's in both budgets, but it hasn't been negotiated.
It hasn't been approved yet. Okay.
The other thing, I mean, this fluctuates a lot, this particular one, but then drops a lot, like Sarah said. So for example, there'll be quite a bit of money taken out beginning of the year when everything. So if you think about it, Rebecca runs it to sort of run out this time of year and then has to reload with everything in the fall. And so in a normal year when students are paying, there's no money coming in right away. And so we're starting to pay out staff and we're starting to pay out for food before any money starts coming into the building.
Correct. Thank you. We have an athletic revolving account. The athletic revolving account is user fee. We take in user fees for athletic participation at both the middle school and the high school. These athletic fees pay for equipment, league memberships, event registrations, referees, and other assorted athletic-related items. The balance on Friday was $10,128.61. It only took 2 clicks to advance that time. We have a revolving account called Chapter 71 Enrichment in our contract with Champions to provide before and after school care. They pay a percentage of their revenue to the Middleborough Public Schools. And this has been used in the past for technology purchases. The balance of this is on June 16th was $172,446.91. Superintendent Lyons and I have had a discussion about this account during budget subcommittee. There was a considerable amount of money cut from the technology budget in order to match the number that the town manager gave us. And we spoke about this account specifically to use to make up for what had to be cut to match the town's number.
In the past, just so everyone knows, we've looked at that account and school choice account. In the past, the majority of school choice students were coming to the high school. And so we looked upon the school choice account as a way to offset costs with the high school. We used that in the past to offset costs in the elementary schools because that's where the majority of those students were coming. So try to split those up to make them make sense with what was going on in the community and where they were coming from.
Correct. And the last revolving account that I'm going to talk to you about tonight is the Special Ed Stabilization Fund. So there was a law passed in 2016 that allowed us to establish a special education stabilization fund. This law enabled municipal districts to establish a reserve fund that can be used in future years for unanticipated or unbudgeted costs of special education, out of district tuition, transportation, and recovery high school tuition. So this law passed prior to my starting here as school business manager. There was a process of creating the account. It had to be approved by town meeting. So I got it through town meeting, and then there was no way to fund it. There was a conversation I had with former town manager Bob Nunes. I would ask on a regular basis, well, how do I put money in there? And he said, you have to budget for it. And then we would go to budget subcommittee, and there's not anybody on budget subcommittee who's going to say, let's take this $100,000 and instead of hiring 2 teachers, let's put it in this account. So I decided at the budget season last year that I would put a small amount of money, $15,000, to set aside just to get something into this account, with the idea that if we needed it during the school year, we would use it. But in March, when I did the transfers for town meeting, we still had that $15,000 available. So now it's tucked away in the Special Ed Stabilization Fund for us to be able to use in future years should we need it. The Special Ed Stabilization Fund, by law, the fund balance can't exceed 2% of the annual net school spending, which for Middleborough is $800,000. So you can see that we're nowhere near $800,000. But up until this last town meeting, that account had 18 cents in it. So,
And the only way to continue to add money to it would be each year when we do the budget to just say, hey, let's scoot a little more money into that account.
that is what former town manager Bob Nunes has said. There are other towns that have agreements with their school district that there's a variety. There's some school districts that they have an agreement with the town that a percentage of any year-end money can go into the account.
Okay.
So we do not yet have such an agreement with the town.
Okay.
And this was really established when the year we had to spend all the circuit breaker money.
Yes.
The year we knew we weren't going to have any holdover of the circuit breaker money, we realized we had to establish something different, and that's what we did.
And that finishes that presentation. The last slide just says, any questions? If I can ever get to the last slide. Any questions on that?
Anybody?
I just wonder, is it worth bringing to the town manager again to ask about adjusting how we are allowed to contribute into that last account?
I have spoken with the town manager about this, and he's indicated that he is open to using end-of-year turnbacks to fund this account. Until we know what we have for end-of-year turnbacks, it's a bit premature. But he's been, very open to that, very supportive of funding this account. He's been very forthcoming about understanding why this account needs to be funded. $15,000 may sound like a lot, but in the world of special education expenditures, it's actually not at all. And he's well aware of that. So I'm not overly concerned that
Great.
we won't have cooperation from the town there, but until there's turnbacks, there's not much to talk about.
I have Sarah do this because I think the revolving accounts are really important. Revolving accounts are a lot of ways that we tap into to do additional things, especially during the year, trying to find funds to pick up things and do things, as long as they conform with what the revolving fund is established for, you can make it happen. So for example, the facilities rental, I don't know that we could go out and buy books with it, just because it's not the use of facility rental, but facility rental in the past has been used to fix various things and to go buy, for example, a scoreboard in the past that I knew that we had down that would be difficult to fund in the regular budget. But thanks.
So my second presentation, which I need queued up. Sorry, it's a money-heavy night. The second presentation, Paul, are you able to? Pull up that slideshow.
The second presentation.
That is it. Thank you. So this second presentation is the financial impact of COVID-19 on the Middleborough Public Schools. I did a presentation to the school committee in April of 2021. In April of 2021, this slide here, I'm waiting for it to come up on the screen over here for you to see. In April of 2021, I put together this slide, and the top left-hand quadrant of this slide was what I presented in April of 21. The ESSER 2 had just been announced, and ESSER 3 had only been hinted at as, now you can see the slide. So that upper left-hand quadrant, in 2021, I spoke about the Plymouth County CARES Act, the Remote Learning Technology Essentials Grant, the Elementary and Secondary Education Emergency Relief Funds, that's what we called ESSER 1. We had the State Coronavirus Prevention Fund, we had a special support earmark, and then the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. So this, as you can see, is set up as a timeline. So ESSER 1 was available to be spent until June of 2022 and had to be completely spent and closed by September 30th of 2022. The ESSER 2 funds needed to be spent by next week, and the accounts need to be completely spent out. And when I say spent out and closed, say for example, we're purchasing computers with the ESSER 2 funds. The purchase order has gone through, the order has gone through. We will get the devices in over the next 4 weeks, and then they'll be paid for, and then this account will be empty and closed. The ESSER 3 funds are required to be spent by next June, or obligated by next June. So the ESSER funds, the three large amounts of grants that we were given, they're the federal coronavirus relief programs, and ESSER stands for the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. Middleborough received $364,274 in the ESSER 1 grant, $1,264,468 in the ESSER 2 grant, and $2,927,303 in the ESSER 3 grant, for a grand total of $4,555,745 in ESSER funds. These ESSER funds, as with any grant, came with very specific guidelines of how the money could be spent. So there were three main categories of how the the grants could be spent. The first category was on academics and instruction, and the money needed to be spent on evidence-based approaches to address unfinished teaching and learning. So high-quality instructional materials and high-quality professional development for district staff, including culturally responsive practices, early literacy programming, K through 12 math skill building, planning and implementing summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, and providing principals and other school leaders with resources to address individual school needs. The second category that we were allowed to spend money on was on social emotional supports and parent and student engagement to address student mental health and well-being and engagement in learning. And the categories under this were evidence-based activities, parent engagement, tracking attendance, and improving student engagement, activities to address the unique needs of low-income children, students with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, students experiencing homelessness, and foster care youth, including outreach and service delivery. Also, to maximize capacity for coordination to connect students to behavioral and mental health supports and services. The ESSER II grant specifically said that at least $10,000 of that grant had to be committed to student mental health services and supports. The third category that we were allowed to spend this money on was operations to address ongoing planning, coordinating, and provision of services related to COVID-19. So keep in mind that this money came from the federal government when we were still in the hybrid learning model, and there were a lot of unknowns in those. So we were allowed to use these funds on educational technology, supplies and services that enabled remote learning, school ventilation system improvements, sanitizing district facilities, COVID-19 testing, PPE, and other supplies and services to implement public health protocols, planning for and coordinating during long-term closures, including how to provide meals, technology for online learning, guidance for carrying out IDEA, that's the Individual Disabilities Educational Act requirements, and providing educational services, other activities necessary to maintain district operations and services to continue to employ existing district staff, including training on minimizing the spread of infectious disease when school resumed. So we still have ESSER III money, and we will still be spending ESSER III money this year, but I want to point out that for each of these ESSER grants, we were allowed to spend money all the way back to March 13th, 2020. So if we had spent $500,000 on sanitizing and we hadn't been able to pay for it up until now, or up until ESSER III came, we were able to pay spring of 2020 expenses. We are very fortunate in Middleborough that we never had to use our ESSER funds dating back to that period in time, that we were able to pay for 2020 in 2020, and the ESSER funds carried us forward. So my next few slides, if this advances, it did really well for a little bit. It just went 5 slides forward. So in that first category, the curriculum and instruction, the Dr. Markulitis, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, can help me out with this. The curriculum and instruction expenditures that we had from these 3 grants over time were?
So specifically, we were asked to spend money on mitigating summer loss. That was Summer Splash. Kessler Science Materials, while it says science, also goes towards math education. Our Early Bird Dyslexia Screener helps us with our foundational literacy, both our approaches and identifying students at risk. Our STAR 360 screeners also identify students at risk, also helps us with our curriculum gaps. something that we know we had to really take a good look at after COVID. We have also been able to buy various ELL resources, particularly using Cengage. These are resources for K through 12 students, our English language learner population. It was a big expense that we were able to cover with the ESSER funds and incredibly helpful. Newsella is an online platform, and that supports social studies, science, and ELA in grades 3 through 12. Handwriting Without Tears is a new program as of last year. We brought that in to support students with their elementary handwriting skills. We've met with some great success in that department. U5 Foundational Literacy, Scope and Sequence. This is a new program that we are onboarding in September. It is really to enhance our phonics instruction. We have mystery science resources, Lexia, which is an intervention tool, a tier 2 intervention. It has been well received, and teachers and students are really expressing that this is helpful. We have added several novels to our curriculum at the middle school level that are both culturally diverse and work on social justice issues. So they're really in our civics and our ELA classes. And the last one, which I already talked about, is our ability to document our curriculum. This is something that I believe in, rather than buying program after program that go away after a while. We are actually able to build our own curriculum with our teachers who are the experts in the field in both the content and the students sitting in front of them.
Can I ask a question on this before we move on? How many of these expenditures are done, paid for, and do not need additional money once the ESSER funds run out to continue to utilize them? Obviously, the Summer Splash and continuing summer programs needs funding, but are the rest of those curriculums paid for and we own them and we don't need continued
No.
maintenance?
No,
Some of them are, sorry,
Go
some of them are 3-year contracts, some of them are 1-year contracts, some of them, like curriculum documentation, we are going to have to make a commitment to finding the funds once the ESSER funds run out.
So almost everything on this list will need continued funding in some way after we no longer have ESSER funds.
Well, and try to remember that it used to be that you bought massive amounts of textbooks in curriculum. So you'll notice, and as we went through budget this year, there wasn't a huge allocation for textbooks. And that's because there is a space in the budget, and we do provide, sort of this new wave of curriculum, which is usually a per head cost. All of these are not listed in the current budget because they were funded through ESSER. But that doesn't mean we have nothing in the current budget either. Okay, so I do think decisions will need to be made, but it is important to note none of these are gone are the days where you purchase something like a set of textbooks and that lasts you until the textbooks run out. Companies are a little smarter than that now. So it's a yearly cost and a yearly contract, which makes it expensive, of course, for municipalities.
Thank you. So the second category that we were allowed to spend money was the social emotional supports, and our director of social emotional learning filled out these next 2 slides for me, and I'm going to do my best to go through everything and explain what it is. And
I can jump in. I know
other
all those
people can jump in as they know. So our first year during the hybrid learning years, we had excessive transportation costs for homeless students, and we spent approximately $100,000 of ESSER funds on transportation for homeless students in order to balance our transportation accounts for the year. But in addition, we've had some Family Strong events through a partnership with Riverside Trauma and through a partnership with the May Institute. We have funded stipends for social emotional learning team leaders. We have a program called Panorama, which is a data warehouse for achievement and social emotional data. We started a program with we enrolled in a program with Care Solace, which assists in getting mental health counseling for students, staff, and their families. We were able to implement parent cafes through staff training. We had the YouthWorks partnership. There was a collaboration with MassMitch, which is the Mass School Mental Health Consortium. And think back to that first summer of 2020 when things were very crazy for a lot of people. We had school adjustment counselors that went out to families and did well-being checks with students and families over the course of that first summer. Questions on anything on this slide before I go on to the next one? Okay, so next slide. Additional social emotional supports. We had professional development opportunities called Having Difficult Conversations, specialized SEL programming. We had supporting SEL programs in the district through advancement of supplies and materials. We streamlined comprehensive mental health system on pre-K through 12. We brought in the Healthy Habits group at HBB and MKG through the Taproots Behavioral Health. And we contracted with the Anti-Defamation League for staff training at the middle school as well as all administrators. Now, you'll notice there's 2 slides for social emotional supports, and there was 1 slide in the curriculum. That's not to say that one was more important than the other, but if you think back in the past 5 years, this is all of a sudden a focus on mental health and social emotional support, which they put their money where their mouths were. They said, you need to do this, and here's the money to do. So this is something that the Middleborough Public Schools embraced, which is why there's 2 slides here. The last category that we were allowed to spend money on was operations. So we purchased programs to facilitate remote learning. So during the hybrid year, there were a number of computer programs that teachers used with the students in order to do the remote learning while the teacher was in the, I'm not talking just like Zoom, but we had a program called Freckle, which the students could work on and the teachers could work with them. So in addition to programs for the communication, we actually contracted with vendors for several programs in order to allow curriculum programs to allow learning to happen. Keep in mind also that ESSER money, that first summer of 2020, we purchased significant amounts of supplies for cleaning and disinfecting, those backpack sprayers that did the aerial disinfection. So that a good portion of that was paid out of ESSER. We paid for devices for student use, computers, flat panel screens to replace projectors. We put in a new HVAC system for MEC. So that was the HVAC at MEC was not working. It was an air quality issue. So when the heat was on in the winter and the windows were closed, things were great and warm, but when it was not time for heating anymore, you could only have the windows open and there wasn't air circulation. So the new HVAC system was installed 2 summers ago and has been online since. And the last bit of ESSER 3 money for operations is for a new dehumidification system for the pool at the complex, where we also identified that we have concerns about air quality in there. So we spent a considerable amount of ESSER money on staffing, and a lot of these fall into the three categories. For example, our Director of Student Services, Kevin Avatavli, obviously falls into Category 2, social and emotional supports. But we also funded our Chief Technology Officer and Communications Director salary through next September. We had hired a STEM curriculum specialist and a humanities curriculum specialist. We're paying for our nurse leader out of ESSER funds. We have a 0.5 student adjustment counselor for the Memorial Early Childhood Center. We have a full-time district psych salary committed to ESSER funds. We have 2 half-time float nurses, an elementary school teacher at MKG. We hired building substitutes, permanent substitutes for all 5 buildings. We have 5 paraprofessionals funded out of ESSER, our district data analysis and classroom interventionalists all funded out of ESSER.
Can I ask a question on this one?
Yes.
Of those staff positions, were any created specifically because of the time period, and were they, like the part-time nurses and things like that, were those only needed because of the COVID protocols and the additional testing? Or were all of those staff positions that were already in place and we were just able to fund them out of the ESSER money?
We have one half-time nurse that's funded out of the operating budget. These were 2 additional nurses that we were able to, 2 additional half-time float nurses that we were able to hire that have flexible schedules. The nurses work under the teacher's contract, and so if they're at the high school, they work from 7 to 2, but if we have a student participating in unified basketball and they require a nurse in the building, we would have trouble staffing that. So we were able to use the ESSER funds to fund those positions. The good news is we do have some grant funding that Paula Magnasco, our nurse leader, who was paid through ESSER, was able to secure grants through the Department of Public Health. And hopefully we can transition those nurses over to those public health grants when the ESSER funds are no longer with us.
Any of the other?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but is part of your question though, that was did the need exist for these positions just because of the circumstances surrounding COVID? And the answer to that is a resounding no. Many of these positions were cut during lean times, dating back several years. That's why you see, for example, any curriculum support. Curriculum support that's not specific to Middleborough. When times are lean, that tends to be an area to cut. And what that leads to is, curriculum that isn't addressed in the same capacity. So this is something that I would say that all of these positions were needed prior to COVID, and had there been more funding, would have been funded. But every budget is a balancing act of, varying degrees of need. It's not uncommon for all educators to say, yes, everything's needed. So it's always a balancing act, but it's important to note that many of these positions are desperately needed as we proceed, out of the ESSER funding era.
So to follow up with her question, so once the ESSER funds run out, we have to fund all of those positions from the general budget then, correct?
So this is what has been referred to as the fiscal cliff. This is something that Superintendent Lynch used to speak about. And when I did my presentation about ESSER money in 2021, he cautioned everybody that, yes, there's a bunch of money now, but there's going to be a $4.5 million hole in the Middleborough Public Schools budget that we're going to need to address. So that's why I'm bringing this information to you tonight, because I need you to know that this is what we're facing in the next budget cycle. So normally we talk about budget I send information out to the principals and directors in October and compile a budget in December. My professional organization, the Mass Association of School Business Officials, is actually running a budget workshop for 2 days in October with people that have done budgets all over the state for years and years, but this is going to be such an unusual budget season. So I'm bringing this to you tonight to also inform you, and this is my last slide, that creating the FY25 budget will be different than anything anybody has ever seen, and that the executive team of the Middleborough Public Schools is going to meet in July. We're beginning our budget process in July because we do have to take a look at every single thing Middleborough Public Schools spends money on, do a return on investment analysis, and say, is this something that stays in the budget? Even if it was something, there's all these things that have come about because of COVID. Some things are definitely going to stay, some things are going to go, but there were things in place prior to COVID. And some of those will stay and some of those will go. So everything goes under the microscope with the executive team this summer, and tough conversations will happen. And I needed you to know this is where we're at this point in time.
So just to be clear, based on the fiscal reality, the answer to your question is no. All those programs won't stay. I mean, they can't. We don't have enough money to cover those programs. So it's how there has to be choices made between what stays and what goes. And this has always been sort of, as Sarah said, the financial cliff. That was the problem with ESSER money. That the good part is you were given the opportunity to do things that you were never going to be able to do, right? And you're going to try things and try programs and try a wide variety of things. And the hope is that you see how they worked and you make decisions based on what works and what didn't work, or what was better than what was before. And so this will be a tough year. I mean, going into knowing that whenever budget time is, it's going to be tougher because we know it's going to have to be a subtraction as opposed to just the same old each time.
The one caveat I'll add, though, is that the work of this year's budget subcommittee did a very important task of creating reservoirs of funding for curriculum that didn't exist before this budget. So I don't feel like we're starting from scratch. And then I just also want to point out there were several, particularly operations expenditures that were one time. We're not going to replace the humidification system again. So not every single item has to be planned for. So it really is going to be a balancing act. And that work is on the shoulders of, my team and me to be judicious about what we're asking for. It shouldn't just be, we've had these wonderful things, and so automatically we're going to ask for every single one. Our task is to look and say, no, really, what are the tough decisions and conversations, as Sarah mentioned, what must we carry forward with us in order to continue to do business? So I don't want to convey that we aren't going to be doing that, because I think that work is incumbent on this team to do, and we will do it.
Mark. Yeah.
Out of $4.5 million in funds, how much have we spent and how much do we have left? In the spirit of transparency, I'd like to see some more accountability on the finances of it, of categorization, or how much money was spent, not just here's where it went. There's no dollars.
One moment.
Thank you.
So to answer your question, I'm sorry, I'm pulling up information as we're speaking. The ESSER 1 funds, which was the $364,274, has been completely spent. The ESSER 2 funds, which is $1,264,468, has been completely spent. The ESSER 3 funds, which was $2,927,303. There is $1,851,886.23 left of that grant, of which $250,000 of it is allocated for the dehumidification system for the pool. So all of the money in this grant is allocated for administrative salaries, professional salaries, ESP salaries, stipends, MTRS and Plymouth County benefits, and then contractual services, supplies, and then that dehumidification system.
So that's all, the million is over this coming year.
Right, and all of this 1,851,000 and change has to be spent by June of 2024.
Okay.
And it will be.
That answer your question, Mark? No problem. Other questions, comments, Chris?
I had a question. I know, like, for example, the YouthWorks program, that for the most part is funded by grants from ComCore and Mass Hire. Did we use the ESSER money to bolster that, or was our version not funded by this state?
Our director of social emotional learning is the one who brought that program in as something as for benefit for the youth of Middleborough, which is why I believe he added that to that slide.
Okay, but the funding for that program wasn't from the ESSER money, it was from grants from ComCore.
Well, correct.
Okay,
But the funding for the person who brought it in
so,
came from ESSER.
okay.
No, I thought that, I could be wrong, and what I'll do is check with Kevin and send you a message, because I think it's important to get this answer correct. But if memory serves, yes, funding comes in through a separate source,
Yeah.
but there are additional things you have to provide, for example, transportation to job placements, and, sometimes it would involve employees to be with the students, you know what I mean? I don't think it was fully funded, but let me get you a more specific answer on that so that you have, and I'll send it to the whole committee, so you have a better understanding of what portion of ESSER was funding YouthWorks.
Yeah, just so like with the other programs, we can start looking at other ways to fund them, so we don't necessarily have to
Exactly.
chisel as much.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
And that concludes my report this evening.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Lyons. Next item on the agenda is the MSBA high school building project. We had a meeting actually today, and just to give everyone a rundown of a couple things, there are only $40,000 in projects left to be done. And it really splits up between 20,000 inside here and 20,000 outside. And all those projects couldn't get done until students were out of the school. So they're going to be done there. Most of them are starting next week, and so they will be done. The plan is that the building committee will end in August still. So everything will be done by the start of school. Currently, the project is $6 million under budget. And we are also, we were finally awarded the silver lead for the project. We were very close to gold, but missed by a couple of points. And so we have a silver project, which is great because it helps with the final financing. At a certain point, MSBA stops and waits till the final numbers come in to do the financing. So that will probably happen in August. So that's the building. Any questions about building at all? Cool. With that, I sent out today, everybody a note about school committee subcommittee assignments. I also put on the agenda that there are two MASC things coming up. The MSAC thing is the Andrews Executive Institute, July 10th through 13th. That's mainly designed for new school committee members. It's sort of a longer piece if anyone is interested in going. And the second is the annual conference for the Massachusetts School Committees and Superintendents, which is November 8th through 10th. And again, I just put that on there. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion, there are meeting minutes and warrants, and a donation from High Point to the Family Resource Center for the Parent Cafe resources. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous. The last two are, I have an action item. The first is we have an MOA with the Middleborough High School. Did you have a question, Mark? That I don't have because it's not listed on my sheet. She just sent a.
I also don't have that number.
Yeah, the thing didn't say. I can find out for you, Mark, and send you a note. Thank you. What? Yeah.
It just goes to the parent cafes. The MOA with the Middleborough Education Association is for the new high school schedule. The schedule will fundamentally change from the block schedule to what's called a hybrid. Paul did the presentation with us in the past. Does anyone have any questions about the MOA? Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. The main changes are around teacher duties and the times of the blocks and the prep time because it conforms with the new schedule. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. The second one is the vote for the ESP contract. The contract is actually two contracts. It's one for this year and one for the following 3 years. It goes over a few things. One is it disperses funds this year as an end of year one-time allotment. And then it increases the steps from, we currently have 4 steps to 10 steps over the next 3 years of the contract, with people moving up each year in the step. And it's for the 3 years of contract, it's a 2.5% raise each of the 3 years. And this year will be, it roughly translates into $1.56 an hour for this. I will say 2 things about the contract. When we had looked at the contract and looked at surrounding areas and towns, we were close. We're on upper level for new hires. The problem that we encountered was for people who were around for a while. We were not in that level. We were down below in the low levels, and that's why we created the 10 steps to move forward with it, because we thought that would bolster people who had been around for a while. With that, the chair asks for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. And with that, the chair would ask one other thing, is we just had a brief discussion today about it. When we are changing, over time, we have changed job descriptions. The union has asked to do an MOA. That wasn't the case previously. And so I would just like the ability to approve and sign an MOA on job descriptions during the summer. I will put them in everyone's Dropbox just so I don't have to wait until people can get hired and moved on with the new job descriptions. So with that, Chair, I entertain a motion to allow them to sign the job MOAs and the job descriptions.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Do you have a question?
I just had a quick question for the one-time payment. Would that be in the checks coming this week or in a separate payment? Like, how does that look?
Sarah?
This is something that the payroll department has been working on ever since we came to an agreement. And so they have everything ready to go to submit with the payroll tomorrow. So we are just waiting for the school committee to vote on it. So barring any problem with the payroll program tomorrow, it will be in the next check.
Awesome. I just know a lot of people were wondering, so I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Anything else, anybody? Our next meeting is July 20th. And with that, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Good night.